Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our session, our special eLimmud FSU e-online session with the ambassador, the Israeli ambassador to the United Nations, Mr. Danon. Thank you so much for being with us. And it is my pleasure to introduce you to the chairman of Limmud FSU, Mr. Matthew Bronfman. Matthew.
Thank you, Natasha, and good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Ambassador. Great to see you again. It's really a pleasure to have you as a friend of Limmud FSU. We value everything you've done for Israel, for the Israeli people, for Israel, and really appreciate you spending an hour with us today. The format today for all our Limmudnik friends is that Michal Grayevsky is going to interview the ambassador, and it's my pleasure to introduce Michal. Michal is a business leader, communication strategist, and former investigative reporter with over 30 years of experience at the intersection of politics, business, diplomacy, and media. Ms. Grayevsky is a senior advisor and chief communications officer to Ronald S. Lauder, providing guidance in his business interests and media relationships. Since 2010, she has also served as president of JCS International, a global media company headquartered in New York. His resume is very, very long, and we don't have time to read it all, but she was for 20 years an investigative reporter at Yediot, has been active in philanthropy, sits on many boards, and was appointed recently and approved to become a member of the American Technion Society. She has a master's degree in mass media, is a graduate of Harvard Business School's AMP, is a friend of mine personally, a friend of Limmud FSU, and it's really my pleasure to turn the microphone or the Zoom call over to Michal to run this program for us. We really appreciate your time and reaching out and your friendship to all of us. Thanks, Michal.
Thank you, Matthew, for the kind introduction. Sandy, Chaim, and Aaron Frankel, our dear friend, listeners, and the very dear Danon family. During Danny Danon terms as an ambassador, I got to know a different side of this man I already know as a dear friend. I can share that Ambassador Danny Danon is a very determined, worthy, professional leader and a true statement. With us today is Ambassador Danny Danon. He has served as Israel's ambassador for the past 56 months, almost 5 years at the United Nations. Before, he was Israel's Minister of Science, Technology, and Space and Deputy Minister of Defense, and also served as Deputy Speaker. Now, a few things you might not know about Ambassador Danon. He was the first Israeli who ever held the position of chair of the United Nations Legal Committee. He has been happily married for 25 years to Tali, that I know her personally and she's great. And they are proudly have parents of 3 wonderful children. And 3, Prime Minister Netanyahu was indirectly involved in his date with his lovely wife, Tali. 4, this is his second time serving Israel in the United States. He served in Miami for 3 years for the Jewish Agency, encouraging Aliyah during Hasbara on campuses. Ambassador Danon, how are you today? And welcome to Limmud.
Thank you very much, Michal. Thank you for having me today. I have a lot of friends. First of all, Matthew, good to see you. I wish we could meet, but we are seeing each other via technology. Mr. Sandy Khan, my dear friend Chaim Chester from Israel, Aaron Frankel. Usually when I speak to your events, you feel the energy in the room. So today we don't have that energy, but I will try to be as energetic as possible. But I'm looking forward to come back to one of your great events to see so many people connected to Israel, to Zionism, and I hope we will be able to do it soon enough.
You're mostly welcome. And usually it's hard to start with the first question, so I'll start with the second one. I would like to start with a subject that is grabbing most of the attention of the world leaders in media right now, sovereignty. And it's always allow me to start this interview with the important distinguish and how it's important, the difference between using annexation versus sovereignty.
So we had a debate in the Security Council a few days ago, and you can imagine that it was all about this issue. And I started with this distinction. I said, you cannot call it annexation. We can discuss, you can criticize, it's not a decision yet. It's a thought in the government to discuss applying sovereignty on parts of Judea and Samaria, but you cannot annex something that belongs to you. And I want to go back to 1981, when Menachem Begin pushed the resolution in the Knesset to apply sovereignty over the Golan Heights. He came from hospital to the Knesset, and he insisted, when he started his speech, this is not an annexation. You cannot annex something that belongs to us. So this is the same situation that we have today. It's a disputed territory. And I asked my colleagues in the Security Council, I asked them from whom we annexed it. It's not a state that Israel captured the land in 1967. We have to remember that the Jordanians decided to give away completely all the rights in Judea and Samaria. Yes, we have dispute with the Palestinians. We welcome negotiations with them, but you cannot annex something that belongs to you.
So as we approach the possibility that Israel's sovereignty over part of the West Bank, what can we share with the audience today? What is going to on behind the scene at the UN, and what opportunities or challenges as President Trump deal of the century present Israel in the United Nations?
So I think, Michal, first we have to look at what's happening in Jerusalem. It's much more important than what's happening in New York or even in Washington. This is a decision of the Israeli government. And according to the agreement between Likud and Blue and White, they will start to discuss it at the beginning of July. So there is no decision. So, and I asked my friends at the UN, why you are criticizing us? Wait, maybe there will be a decision that we will support. So first we have to wait to see whether the Israeli government decides to move on or not. What is the extent of the decision? And then for sure there will be a debate in the Security Council, but we cannot ignore what's happening in the US. You have elections coming up in November, and I think that the government will have to take that into consideration, because you cannot take such a bold decision right before the elections or right after the elections. So I think if you want to frame the window of opportunity, we are talking about the summer, July, August. This is a time frame for the Israeli government to discuss this issue.
So you took us to Jerusalem. Let's talk about Israel. How does the anti-Israel sentiment impact your work in the United Nations? Is it hostile among world leaders and diplomats, as you might have here at the street of those countries?
So after 5 years, I think I got immune to those libel against Israel. But I'm optimistic, because you spent a lot of time also at the UN, Michal, and you know that we have a lot of quiet relationships with many ambassadors, many countries. And if we look at the numbers, at the UN, we have 193 member states. Israel has diplomatic relations, official ones, with more than 160 countries. But we have embassies or missions or consuls. And then with most of the rest, we do have diplomatic relations, but they are quiet. And I worked really hard to try to convince them to actually expose what we are doing publicly. I visited Dubai, I visited Morocco, I had meetings with many Muslim leaders, and I always told them, don't be afraid. You should be a leader. Look at Egypt, for example. They are not hiding about the peace treaty. And I think if we will see one step coming from the Gulf, many other Muslim countries will follow, and we will have open diplomatic relations with many more countries.
So some of those new non-permanent members of the Security Council from Western countries like they provide pro-Israel, particularly Norway and Ireland. Do you see that hurts Israel, and what can you do about it?
So always you have in the Security Council some countries which are more favorable to Israel, some are less. I think you cannot put Ireland and Norway in the same basket. Ireland are very active, unfortunately, supporting the Palestinians at the UN. and we should expect that in the beginning of 2021, they will take the lead on activities in the Security Council on this issue. But the bottom line is to have the support of the US, to have the veto. I was there in 2016 when Ambassador Samantha Power unfortunately got instructions from President Obama not to veto a resolution. I was by myself. And that was the first moment that I was actually in a place against the US. It happened only once, and I don't think it will happen in the future, regardless of the results of the elections. So I think, despite the fact that you have new members, as long as the US is supporting Israel in the Security Council, we can be relaxed about it.
Let's go what's going on currently in the United States and the protest. How have the protests across the United States impact your work at the UN? Some leaders of the Black Lives Matter movement have made anti-Semitic statements. How do you stand up to that?
So unfortunately, we hear those anti-Semitic remarks, and that's unfortunate. And we should remind those people who are marching that the first to support the fight of the Afro-American community in the US were Jewish leaders like Abraham Eshel and other leaders that marched with them, supported them. So I think it's dangerous to mix this issue and to have us be part of their struggle and their demonstrations. And I think most at the UN, we are not getting involved in the politics of the US, but listen, we look at New York today, it's a different city. First with the coronavirus, then with the demonstrations. It's not the same city that we used to function and to live, and also the UN is not the same. Michal, every September, everybody is complaining about the traffic and about the General Assembly that, thousands of people are coming to the high-level week.
And it's shut down.
No one will come in September. The General Assembly will take place the same way that we are doing it today. You're going to have videos of leaders speaking to others. So it's a different ballgame for all of us, and we have to get used to it.
So the lockdown, the coronavirus lockdown, impacted really hard the work in the UN. Behind the obvious challenges of lockdown itself, what setback has this pandemic causes to foreign affairs, and how is the world's most important governing body functioning during this world crisis?
So I think we can analyze it now and see that there were two stages. At the first stage, everyone took care of his own country. Even the Europeans, the US, everybody closed the borders and dealt with their own issues. After a few weeks, we saw that countries started to cooperate. And we have to work together. We have to cooperate in order to defeat this virus and get ready for the future. And today the UN is much more involved. And I think we have to learn the lessons. If you look at the World Health Organization, in the past, we didn't pay enough attention to this organization. When you look at the budget of this organization, the leadership of this organization, and I admit, at the UN Security Council General Assembly, we spoke about Iran, we spoke about Russia, China, Ukraine. We haven't discussed the World Health Organization. I'm sure it will change, but also we saw positive acts. For example, we spoke about the cooperation with Arab countries. So we in Israel, we mobilized the Mossad to purchase equipment. We needed medical supply in Israel. And one of the first countries to help us was a country in the Gulf. So we take a lot of pride about sharing our technology and helping other countries, which is great. But this is an example of a small country in the Gulf that actually helped Israel. So I think it was a good sign for us, and we have to work more about cooperation.
So this is, you've been 5 years as the UN ambassador. So what have been your greatest achievement and most complex challenges at the UN? What change have you seen in the worldview towards Israel at the UN during that time?
So Michal, it looks like 50 years. It feels like 50 years. And Matthew, I have a lot of gray hair and white hair.
I can't see it. I'm
I
sorry.
did before I came to New York,
Right.
but we accomplished a lot. So I would say the greatest achievement was the fact I was able to get elected to become the chairman of the legal committee, the sixth committee, for the first time. It was a secret ballots. Many countries voted, worked against us and spoke against us. But at the end of the day, I received the support of 109 member states that voted for me. And I chaired this committee for a year. And I think in the future, every ambassador can actually now think about running for senior positions at the UN. We have 6 committees, and that's why they fought against it, because it was an important precedent. And the second achievement, and I know, and I look here, I see my dear friends, Chaim, Matthew, and Aaron, you bring thousands of people to Israel. I brought 100 people, but they were all UN ambassadors. I took them to Poland to the March of the Living, and then we went to Israel, and I saw the impact of those trips on those ambassadors. When I took Ambassador Samantha Power or Nikki Haley, and they went into the tunnels of Hamas. So I think those people will never forget what they learned during those trips to Israel. And I think I'm very proud of that, and I think we should all continue to bring leaders to Israel.
New York is very diverse, and we have a lot of Jewish community here. And what is your interaction with the Jewish community in the United States? How is that interaction came into fruition and success during your term at the UN?
So I think we should be grateful for the strong, great Jewish community. And for me, it was honestly, it was hard, because you live in New York. It's a Jewish city. You feel welcome. People love you, admire you. But then when you cross one street, First Avenue, and you enter the UN, it's a different place. It's a different planet. So every day I had to walk in and out. But coming out to the UN, I found a great Jewish community. And I think we Israelis, we always speak about what we can teach others. And I learned that we can also learn from the great Jewish communities in the diaspora. I have 3 kids that they attended the Jewish day school. They attended the summer camp, not this year, unfortunately. They're really upset about it, that they're not attending the camp. And I think we can learn a lot, and we should have a stronger dialogue between the Israelis and the Jews in the diaspora, and we can learn more from one each other.
Ambassador Danon, Michal, hi. Sorry, just one second. I'm seeing already some questions
From the audience?
Yeah, I just wanted to encourage our audience. So if you have any questions to Ambassador Danon, please write them in the chat. Or if you want to ask Ambassador Danon the questions directly, please write in the chat. We will do so after the first part of the interview. Sorry about that. Yes.
Okay, so I have, you have had the pleasure of working with 3 different amazing women as ambassador to the UN, Samantha Power, Nikki Haley, and Kelly Craft. How does working with 3 different administration impact your work at the UN, and what were some of the biggest challenges?
So it was unique, you know, all of them supported Israel. I think with Ambassador Power, unfortunately, we had to deal with the vote, and it was unfortunate, because today when people speak about Obama's period, they all speak about Resolution 2334. But before that resolution, we did a lot of great things. We signed a very important MOU with the US. We passed important resolutions. So we accomplished a lot, but because of that resolution, nobody pays attention to what we accomplished. Ambassador Haley, she's a great friend of Israel. She's a strong advocate, and she publicly supported Israel. That was very important. And we see also Ambassador Kraft doing the same, not only voting with Israel, but publicly taking a stand and supporting us. And I think it's important, because the UN, it's a great megaphone where you should speak up and send your message abroad.
But you brought both of them to Israel.
Absolutely. I had the pleasure to accompany Ambassador Power, and for Ambassador Nikki Haley, it was the first visit to Israel. And for a week, we traveled the country, and it was amazing to see the impact on her. And she came back after that with her family. And I think today we have a great friend, and I'm sure all of those ambassadors will continue with their political careers and the time that is spent at the UN, that will be an important part for the future.
And before we getting to our audience question, I just want to ask you, what wisdom, tips, insights that you could give to your successor, Gilad Ardan, member of the Knesset?
So I think it's very important, to understand that in the UN, it's not black and white. I served in the Knesset and the government many years, and you have coalition and opposition, and already you have people that you work with or you work against. At the UN, the gray area is the majority. So you should approach everybody. You should speak with everybody. And I thought myself that I got involved in important decisions and achievements because I approached people that supposedly are not recognizing us. So I think you should be open-minded and never say no to anyone, to be open-minded and to build bridges.
That's amazing. So we have the first question, Natasha.
Yes. So we have a question from Yaron Shalom. He's asking, now that you've been on the diplomacy side, what are the main differences between it and politics? And where did you feel that you made more of an impact? And have you picked a favorite?
So both are fascinating. It's a great question. First, I will tell you, Yaron, that coming from the Knesset, in the Knesset, usually people will say bad things about you behind closed doors, and publicly they will say good things about you. At the UN, it was exactly the opposite. People spoke about Israel publicly, it was horrible, but then when you met them, you saw that actually they admire Israel. So it was a different setting of play for us. And I think also you have to understand that in diplomacy, you do a lot of things quietly. In politics, and Michal, you covered a lot of politicians in your life, you have to get credit immediately. You have to get credit immediately. You did something good, you demand the headline tomorrow morning. I realized that, many times, I was involved in moving embassies of two countries from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, Guatemala and the US, building relations with other countries. Most of the work, you have to do it quietly. You should not take credit for that. And that's different than politics. Both are exciting. And I think today, when I go back to Israel, I will be able to actually bring my experience from the diplomatic arena back to the public arena in Israel. I think it's a good combination for every leader. And Prime Minister Netanyahu, he actually served at the UN before he entered the public life in Israel. And you can tell that he understands complex issues, global issues. If you're dealing only with politics in Israel, you get tied up to the machine, to the system, and you don't have time to analyze and understand global issues.
Yeah, I really want to compliment you about the 5 years. I feel that we really breach with the Arab world and Arab leaders, and this is hard work, and it's very nice to hear that. Another question that we have?
Yes, so we have Chaim Chesler. Want to ask a question? Chaim, the floor is yours. Chaim, just unmute yourself. Chaim? Yes.
Ambassador Danon, we know each other many, many years. First of all, I want to really compliment you. Like Michal said, look, surprising to many, many Israelis, because you went to the UN with no experience in diplomacy on this level, you did a great job. Nobody can say a word. And believe me, many Israelis wanted you to fail, and you did the opposite. So first of all, I want to compliment you because your achievement can be seen and can be learned. So that's number one. Number two, on the real issues, what now concerning many, many Israelis is the decision of the Supreme Court, World Supreme Court in Geneva. That's a decision which I haven't made yet, which very soon, next week, following few days, can make a big difference for the state of Israel and for many top-ranking Israelis. Would you elaborate on this issue and how to tackle it, how to combine it, to combat it, please?
Thank you, Chaim. It's great to see you. And yes, we go back, I wouldn't say how many years, but the fact that both of us are involved on Zionism, it shows that we come from different perspectives politically, but we have the same passion for Israel and the Jewish people. And thank you for your friendship. Yes, it's a real issue. And unfortunately, Israel, unlike the US, we are not in a position to put pressure on the ICC and say, if you will continue with this case, we will not allow you to enter the US. We will put sanctions. We are a small country. And I think that we have to get ready to the worst scenario because it's not a real tribunal. They're not actually looking to find the facts. They want to blame Israel. And in the past, we had to decide whether to cooperate or not to cooperate. But when we looked at the language and the procedures, we understand that this is a political maneuver. And we have to learn about it also for the future, because with the Palestinians, every time we allow them to enter an international organization, they promise that they will not use it as a platform against Israel. But a year, 2 years, 3 years after, they forget about the promise and they come against us. And the first thing we will do, I'm not leading the legal fight, but our lawyers will have to do, is to argue the issue of the standing of the Palestinians. The Palestinians have no standing in the court. It's not a state. They don't have a state. So I think that will be the first fight that we will have to argue about the standing of the Palestinians in front of the court. And then we will have to deal with the issues themselves. But, when you look at what's happening all around the world, all the atrocities, and you see that the court is focusing not in Yemen, not in Libya, they come against our boys and girls in the IDF, you understand, and I agree with you, it is a serious issue for us.
Okay,
Thank you,
Ambassador. We have another question, Natasha.
Yes, we have a question for the ambassador from Igor, who's asking, what is your reaction to the letter by 40 prominent Jewish leaders of the UK, specifically their point that the annexation will make it impossible to continue their advocacy of Israel?
So we welcome criticism. We welcome involvement of all Jewish leaders. This is part of our democracy, part of but I would expect them also to respect the democracy in Israel. And we have a strong democracy. Exactly 15 years ago, I remember it very vividly, the Israeli government decided to evacuate Jews from Gaza and the northern communities of the Shomron. That was a very hard decision. I'm sure, maybe I'm wrong, but I would expect that those 40 leaders supported the decision of that government, back then Sharon's government. And we implemented that decision. It was hard for us, but we have a strong democracy, and we implemented the decision. So I would expect them also to respect the process. If there will be a decision by an Israeli government, they should respect it. Even if they don't support it, I think they should respect it. And I would also tell them that when you look at our history, always you heard those threats coming about important decisions. In 1948, about declaring a state. In 1967, Levi Eshkol, after we liberated Jerusalem, decided to apply sovereignty over United Jerusalem. A lot of pressure. 1981, Menachem Begin and the Golan Heights. The US threatened us, and actually Reagan punished us after that. But we continued with applying sovereignty on the Golan. 2 years ago, I was at the UN when President Trump decided to move the embassy. We heard a lot of pressures and threats. So I think at the end of the day, we should respect the wisdom and the process of the Israeli public when they reach those decisions. So
actually, I want to ask you a question about the boycott of Facebook that's developing right now by all the 500 Fortune companies. What do you think about it?
So the fact that I'm
especially that we have the BDS and movement, I just want to hear from you as an ambassador to Israel.
So I will tell you that, we cherish freedom of speech in Israel, and I have dealt with those issues when I was in the Knesset. You don't want to control the content, but at the same time, we should not allow those vehicles to become platforms platform for incitement and promoting anti-Semitism. So we expect from those companies to show wisdom, responsibility, and not to allow them to become platform of hate. Yes, to criticize Israel, it's legitimate. We don't want to agree with everything and with everybody. But when you see those allegations and you see hate language, anti-Semitism, that's where you have to put the line.
We have a lot of comment on this interview. You get a lot of compliment. Natasha, please, next.
Yeah, so we have one comment is one of the best ambassadors at the UN.
From Avi Balashnikov.
Yes, and we have another question from Alex from Israel, and he's asking if you can tell us in privately, because in Limmud we know how to keep a secret, what role of a minister is waiting for you when you return from the mission to Israel?
Well, I think we have 36 ministers, so I don't think we need a 37 minister in the government. But I'm still young, you know, and I met my dear friend, Ambassador Nikki Haley, and I asked her about, because she left the UN, and she told me to take my time, not to jump immediately about the next stage. And I think it was a smart decision. So first I will have to come back and visit my mother. You know, she has been in isolation for many months, and I want to spend time with her, see my friends, family. But definitely, I intend to continue to be active in public life. I'm not quiet. By the way, it was very hard for me many times when I wanted to express my ideas, my position, and you cannot do it as a senior diplomat. You have to stay on course and to support always the position of the government. So I think when I will be able to speak my mind, some in Israel will be very happy, some will be less, but it will come from my heart, and it will come from a place to make a change and to make our life better.
You're gonna write a book?
I wrote a book about 10 years ago, and I think I have a lot of great stories about my experience and what happened behind the scenes, and I definitely think about it, Michal.
Okay.
So we have, so we have a question from Matthew.
Hi, everybody. Ambassador Danon, thank you again. It's great to see you. I also wish we could be in person and see you. And I remember greeting you on your first few weeks when you were in New York, and what an amazing job you've done. One of the greatest challenges I think Israel faces is the Islamic Republic of Iran. I, for one, not that we're supposed to talk politics, but was very gratified when President Trump got out of the JCPOA, but not all the countries in the UN were also happy with that. And what is your feeling about sanctions, Iran, the threat to the state of Israel by Iran, and what more we can do as either Limmud or supporters of the state of Israel to help counter this really, truly existential threat?
Matthew, it's absolutely the main issue, and I'm worried because we are so busy with the pandemic that we haven't paid enough attention to what's happening in Iran. You know, we push back in many ways, but the international community, the focus is not there. After we finish this conversation, I will have to go back to my work, and on Tuesday there will be a discussion at the UN regarding the arm embargo against Iran. In October, the Security Council will decide whether to continue with the embargo or not, and our position is very clear about it, that we will not allow Iran to become a strong promoter of instability in the region. And the US is supporting this approach, but it's not easy. So we have signs, for example, from Germany, and a few months ago they decided to outlaw Hezbollah completely in Germany. It was an important sign, because basically when you look at Hezbollah, it's a proxy of Iran, and they get the funding from Iran. So I think hopefully we will see more countries in Europe taking the same approach like us and the US in order to block the aggression coming from Iran. It is a major threat, not only to Israel. And, when we speak with our friends from the Gulf countries, you know, they have fear from the Iranians. When you speak with Israelis, and all of you have friends and family in Israel, the Israelis are not afraid of the Iranians. We are worried. But when you speak with leaders from the Gulf, you see the fear. And they tell me, Danny, they will attack Dubai and Riyadh before they will attack Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. So I think today we have to collaborate with those who think like us and push the Europeans to join the US.
Yes, yes. Sandy Khan.
Hi, Ambassador Danon. Thank you so much for taking the time with us today. And I, for one, as an American living in New York, have been so proud of the work you've been doing and how you represent the state of Israel. It really is remarkable. We want to invite you to our, hopefully we will have one of our first Limmuds not virtually, in December in Israel, and we certainly want you to come. It'll probably be near Ramat Gan. For the people on this call, some who are unfamiliar with Limmud FSU, we are already a global phenomenon movement of the young volunteers of Russian-speaking young people. It's based on informal Jewish education and a volunteer-led conferences all over the world. We're in 9 countries. So you have an official invitation from us for December. And we wish you the best of luck in whatever you do next.
Thank you very much. I don't know if you remember, but Chaim and Matthew will remember that one of my first public speaking event when I came to New York was a Limmud Shabbaton in New Jersey. Chaim,
Of course.
Because you were sitting back at that time. Now we're having this talk when I'm wrapping my stuff, getting ready to go back to Israel. But I would love to attend your event, and I have to apologize because I got invitations to many locations that I wish I could join you over the years, but leaving the position, leaving New York. Actually, when I was in the Knesset, I traveled more than I traveled when I was in New York. You know, when I have friends in the West Coast or in Canada, because, you know, when you sit as the ambassador, you have to pay attention, and hopefully I will be able to participate in one of your future events.
You're always welcome, Natasha.
We have another question from Mila from Israel, and she's asking, judging by what you hear during your daily work at the UN, how is the world responding to the annexation?
So first of all, we have to acknowledge that most of the world is not dealing with the Middle East today. People are now busy with the issue of the coronavirus, the economical crisis. That's what they're focusing on. In general, and we can look back a few days ago, most of the countries that actually spoke were against it. And they said it was a unilateral action. And I reminded them that when we decided to withdraw from Gaza, it was also a unilateral action. And most of them were not supportive of this move. And my main message was to them that when you look at the history of the Palestinian, you have rejectionism. They always reject everything. And from our side, we have realism. You know, when Ben-Gurion decided to accept the partition plan, he wasn't happy about it. But he said, you know what? Let's take it and build something out of it. And the Palestinians, they always say no. From 48, 67, to Sharon, to Rabin, to Olmert, to Barak, to Netanyahu. And I told them, listen, that's what we have today. You have rejectionism again, and you have realism. If you want to change it, bring them to the negotiations, and that maybe will change the game. And I'm still seeing that might happen. But from reports that we heard, the US tried actually to engage a conversation between Secretary of State Pompeo and President Abbas, and he was not willing to take that call. So I think the Palestinians, they don't want even to negotiate with us, and that's not playing for their side.
Yes, and we have another question from Leonid from New York, and he's asking, how is the role of the ambassador to the UN different from the ambassador to Washington of Israel, and will the role not for Gilad Erdan to perform it properly?
So it's two different positions. You know, in the UN, you work with many colleagues. You work with the UN officials. We have to understand the UN. It's like a country. It's like a state. You know, when you look at the building of the UN, none of the ambassadors have any office in that building. We cannot go there most of the times, only for meetings with UN officials. It's all thousands of UN bureaucrats. So we work with the UN a lot. And my friend Gilad will be covering DC and the UN for a short period of time. It will not be easy because also in DC it's a lot of work, and I know from my dear friend Ambassador Dermer, but it's a limited period of time. And then he will focus on the UN, where you have to work day and night, you know, attending events and push back and bring initiatives to the table.
Yes, and Marina from Washington asking, so how would you handle the criticism, and Israel will handle the criticism once annexation is true?
So I always, when I spoke with Prime Minister Netanyahu and my colleagues in the government, and I was a member of the government, I tell them, you reach the right decision, and we will deal with the international pressure afterward. And you mentioned a book. In my first book that I wrote, Israel, the Will to Prevail, Michal, I spoke about Golda Meir and about the mistake she did in the Yom Kippur War. Because the decisions she made, she always thought about what will happen at the UN, what will happen in the White House with Kissinger, and she made too many speculations. And I think we should expect our leaders to take the right decisions that are right for the Jewish people and for the Israelis. And then we can deal with the backlash, UN resolutions. We have diplomats, we have allies, we have friends, we are not alone. We can do that. But we should not take the decisions according to what will happen and what if. All the decisions that I mentioned in the past, the crucial decisions in our history, always there were people who say, don't do it, it's not the right timing. So there is never right timing to declare independence, to apply sovereignty. Always you're gonna have someone upset about it. So we will deal with that, but first the government has to decide exactly what they want to achieve.
Yes, and we have also a very light question. What will you be missing the most in New York? Asking Yael from New York.
So I would answer that you have New York before the corona and after the corona. Because actually today at New York, you know, it's not as pleasant as we used to. You know, so I think Israel Day Parade that we all missed this year, which is something great to see so much love and support. And I invited my colleagues, the ambassadors, to march with me every year in the parade. And they were amazed to see so many people standing and cheering up for Israel. It's a unique experience. And I think, you know, even though I will live in a Jewish state, I think the Jewish life of New York, it's something special that me and my family will never forget.
Mm-hmm. Natasha, we have another question. Somebody wants to ask.
Yeah, sorry, I lost you for a minute. Yes, we have a question. Yeah, we have a question from Thomas from Boston, and he's asking if you will be able to stay much longer for a couple of more years or even months. Will you do so, or you're ready for your next venture?
So without getting into politics, I believe in term limits. I think in every position, it's important to move on. Because even though I know everybody at the UN and everybody knows me, and I think, you know, it's always good to have new ideas coming in with different ideas. And I think 5 years, it's a long period. When I look at my dear friend, Ambassador Haley, she served for 2 years. And most of the ambassadors, they serve for 3 years. 4 years is because we had so many elections, we couldn't make that change. So I think it is about time for me to move on. And in general, I do think that you need to have a term limit for ambassadorial positions and for other positions as well.
Is your kids will miss New York?
So my kids are really upset that they are not in camp now. So For example, if I spoke about it, that's something we can think about in Israel. When I look at my nephews and my friends, they are not spending a meaningful summer. But for my kids to go to a Jewish camp for almost 2 months, be involved with Jewish life, was a great experience. And I think we should think about similar activities in Israel to do to our children in Israel, so that they will definitely miss the camp and they will miss their friends. But once they will open the flights, I'm sure a lot of people will come to visit us in Israel.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we have also our president, Aaron Frankel, who also wanted to say a few words. Aaron, please.
Yes, nice to see you, Danny. What I want to say is that we all respect and admire you, because not only talks, as usually in diplomacy, I saw you firsthand in action. I saw you with few tens of ambassadors to UN in Israel. I think it was in the Independent Day of Ha'atzmaut 2 years ago or 3 years ago, on the balcony of across my house in Hilton with Sheldon. So I saw you in action with many ambassadors to change the views and understand what is the real Israel. Saw you in Toronto with the Keren HaYesod and the other leaders of Jewish from all over the world, Jewish communities. So we admire people which are proven with their action. They are capable and they represent well the interests of Israel and the Jewish people around. We can only salute you, and we are welcoming you back home to Israel, and you are a great friend of Limmud, and would like to see you again and again with us. So thank you, that's what I have to say.
Thank you, Aaron. We have Avi Balashnikov, who also wanted to say a few words. Avi?
Yes, good afternoon from Jerusalem, and I have only short comment to you, Danny. And I can tell you that as the former Director General of the Parliament, I think that you have to consider very seriously the suggestion that Michal just told you to write a book. I think that if I'm try to remember one of the best ambassadors that we have since Abba Evan, Benjamin Netanyahu, and Danny Danon, and you should write a book, and you should publish what you did, what you done. I think that you did a great, great job, and this is the reason that I was so happy to take part in this conversation. Just do it.
Thank you.
We also have another question from Robert Cantor, who's saying, I'm active in the local and national media regarding a number of social issues. Please talk about the influence of the media on your work, the United Nations, and anti-Semitism around the world.
Thank you, Aaron and Avi. And Aaron, I think the last time we met was in the March of the Living with the ambassadors, and I know that all of you are very active, and it's very hard for you to stay in one place, but hopefully we can get all of us back on track with our Zionist ideology on work very soon. So the issue of the media is very important, and I think we should fight every time when we see something wrong. So when the ambassador of Venezuela compared the IDF soldiers to the Nazis, I pushed and I fought until I received an apology. And when he called me, I told him, don't call me. You should apologize publicly in the same place where you made that miserable comment. And he did eventually. And I think the same with the media. When we see a lie, when we see something is wrong, we should not let it go. We should demand them to correct it. We should demand them to show the facts. It's important for the future, because the Palestinians, what they are doing now, unfortunately, they are spreading lies. And if you stay silent, it becomes a fact. Even with the virus, we are collaborating with the Palestinian Authority. We send medical supply to them. We train their doctors. And despite that, their representative came to the Security Council and blamed us for spreading the virus. he said that the soldiers of the IDF are actually spreading the virus. This is anti-Semitic. So we fought it back. And that's what I call all of us to continue to fight back because it's not a one time that you correct. It will continue those lives, and we have to be on alert and fight back.
And we also have a follow-up question on that. What countries are the most oppressive in their media as it relates to Israel, in your opinion?
So, you know, I think today we're in a much better situation than before. So in the past, you know, we saw countries like Venezuela that was very hostile to Israel. Today they are busy with their own issues. Bolivia changed. You know, they used to have a regime which was against Israel, and now they have a new leadership that supports Israel. And I met with them, and we're building bridges with them. So we see less hostility from other regions. Mostly it will start with the Palestinians. They will drag the Arab League to support their position, and then you will get the EU and other countries. But I think when you do it bilaterally and you sit with them one-on-one, Israel is in a good shape. We have a lot of friends. We have the US standing with us. We have strong allies like Canada, Australia, Germany, the Eastern European countries. You know, they are part of the EU, and they are very vocal now. In the past, Aaron, you are very familiar with that. They used to be very quiet. Today, they feel equal, and they should be that way. And they take a stand supporting Israel within the EU. So overall, I'm very optimistic about our position.
Thank you, Ambassador Michal. We're almost out of time, so if you would like to.
So I really would like to wrap up and say that I would like to thank on behalf of myself, on behalf of Matthew Bronfman, Aaron Frankel, Sandy, and Chaim, to you, Ambassador, and tell you that thank you so much for your serve Israel at the United Nations. Derech tzlecha and kol hakavod. And we're probably going to see you in the future somewhere. And I want to thank our audience, and I would like to ask all of you to stay safe and healthy.
Thank you very much. It was my pleasure. Thank you. Good to see all of you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. If you would like to see this session, please go to our Facebook page, Limmud FSU Official, and you will see the recording right there, and also follow up with our announcements for next week's events. Thank you. As Michal said, stay safe and healthy.
Thank you, and send our regards to your lovely wife, Dolly.
I will. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.